Welcome back to episode 146 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined as always by Adam.
Hello.
And by Cam.
Hey.
And we're a group of auto-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Almost deaf.
Do we have some stories to talk about?
Tons of stories.
Fairy tales in particular.
Tales to tell, great and small.
Myths to pass down through the generations.
Yeah, kicking things off today. Just yesterday was the Throne of Eldraine announcement. We got to see some new previews. We got to see the new mechanics from the set. And
The most jacked planeswalker in the universe is back,
Yeah.
baby.
Old Big swinging himself.
Yeah, dude.
I love to see it. I'm happy he's back.
Oh, yeah. Pete was very excited.
We'll talk about Garrick and his card in a little bit, but to start things off, actually on Arena, we've actually been able to play with a couple of the new cards since yesterday in the Brawl. Did you guys play any of that?
Yeah, I did, actually. I played the Esper deck.
Yeah.
That has the one fairy that makes 1/1s when you cast artifact or enchantment spells.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized it was commander and I conceded and didn't play anymore.
I didn't even realize what's going on.
I went
Wait
to
a minute.
cast. I cast it. I was like, oh, maybe they just let you cast it once for free, and then it died. And it was like command zone or graveyard. And I just I'm like, how about this? Top right. Oh yeah, command zone or graveyard. How about the concession button, buddy button? I'm out of here. No more. So, but I did, and then I ended up actually going on to Mythic Spoiler and looking at.
You didn't get warned about that? Like when you were a kid in school, like the strangers would come up to you in the alley like, hey kid, want to play some EDH?
Yeah, they got me.
Yeah, they trick you.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's just a normal, fun, special format. Come check it out. Just EDH. Yeah, rats.
But yeah, the whole theme of this set is looking really cool.
I think it's really sweet.
Some of the new cards are really sweet, but we'll start things off by talking about the new mechanics in the set. The first one being Adventure, which essentially is a new way of doing a split card where in the bottom left corner of the Adventure cards, you have a sorcery ability, so you can cast a card as a sorcery.
Sometimes it's an instant, right?
Yeah, sorcery or instant, I think. I actually haven't seen any ones that are instants, I don't think.
That black card, like draw a card, lose a life, I think is an instant. Then decides a 1-mana 1/1. Falmar Knight.
Oh, yeah, there is an instant one. You're right. So they're sorceries or instants, and when you cast them as an adventure, the card gets exiled, and then you can cast it from exile for its creature half the card. Or you can just cast it as a creature to start.
On the upfront.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. Super cool for limited. There's tons of decisions. At first, I wasn't super excited about the templating of these cards, but the more I think about it, these are probably the cleanest split cards ever made. Because if you think about how you draw and read a split card, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
opponent just drew a split card in limited, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now you just read your card normally. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
at first-
that is something I hadn't really thought about.
yeah.
And-
so when I think about these, yeah, I think it's actually from a design perspective. I'm not sure I like how it's like a book in the little template, which is weird that I wouldn't like that, given what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't sure about it. But actually, this is definitely the cleanest split card templating I've seen. So I like it.
I also think they have to do it this way for a split, because these are the first split cards that are permanents, right? Every other split card has been instants and sorceries or whatever.
Yeah.
And permanents need to be recognizable on the battlefield by large enough art.
You're right.
And so just to have parsable battlefields so that you can tell what it is when it's there, like it has to be small like this. So I like these. I actually really like the templating.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool mechanic and something we haven't seen before, really.
I'm
ever.
interested how they'll play out because like just inherently the fact that each of these are 2 cards, like you have taken 1 draw step to get a card that you can cast twice and get 2 effects. Like that's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's on par with Baleful Strix.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see once we start seeing more of the rares, or if there's mythic rare adventure cards, like how far you can really push these abilities.
Yeah, and from what we've seen so far, it looks like they are designing them fairly safe so that like even though it's 2 cards, they're not very overwhelming on a card advantage front. They just sort of, the adventure half enables the creature half, or else the creature half's kind of minimal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, one of the rares they've spoiled so far, the Love Struck Beast. This one seems really good. You can adventure it for 1 green mana to create a 1/1 white human creature. And then it's just a 3 mana 5/5 after that. So it curves really well
Yeah,
into
but it
itself,
can't
right?
attack unless you control a 1/1. So like making a 1 mana 1/1 is not actually kind of worth a card, but then it enables the other half, which is worth more than a card. So
And a card like this, I mean, a few of them, the adventure cost is higher than its actual mana cost. But for this one, this is just one card that curves into itself if you have it at the start of the game, right? You have a 1-drop and a 3-drop all wrapped up in one, which is actually pretty insane when you think about the play pattern implication for cards like this, right?
yeah.
Being able to, I mean, this is a really important thing in Standard specifically. Like, historically, the best Standard decks are the ones that curve out the best, right? They have very powerful plays on every part of their curve. And having you mean 1 mana for a 1/1 creature token isn't that great, but you still have a curve all built into one single card,
Yeah.
which,
I mean, really, when you think about this card too, it's 4 mana for 6 power and toughness across 2 bodies. That's unbelievable. I mean, a 5/5 is gigantic. A 5/5 for 3 mana is just outrageous.
yeah, it's huge.
And it's like a bit unlike other 3 mana 5/5s we've seen. The most recent, I guess, being Wayward Sawtooth, which couldn't do anything unless a condition was met. This can still block.
Yeah, and having a 1/1's not, too difficult. I presume there'll be, a ton of white weenie or green, 1/1's lurking around. So, a green-white aggro deck could play this no problem. I'm sure there's lots of decks that can make tokens, even in green.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I did see someone on Reddit, though, discussing this card, say that it's a bit of a Nanba with anthems because none of your 1/1s will be 1/1s anymore.
yeah, they're right about that.
Yeah.
Can't overrun and then attack.
Yeah. Ooh, they thought of everything.
Yeah, so the next mechanic we have in Throne of Eldraine is called Adamant, and this is basically built off the theme of there's 5 courts in Eldraine that constitute, the realm of Eldraine. Whatever, each court has its own color, which is kind of to be expected with 5 colors in Magic. But the Adamant mechanic allows you, it reads if you spend 3 or more mana of whatever card, the color the card is, you get a extra ability. So, for example, the card we're looking at right now is Embereth Paladin. It costs a red and 3. Generic for a 4/1 human knight. Has haste, and adamant is if you spent 3 red mana to cast the spell, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it.
So bonuses are playing them in primarily their color, but they can be included elsewhere. I like that.
Yeah, so we've only seen monocolor cards with this mechanic. I would expect by just how this mechanic plays out that we're only going to see monocolor cards with this mechanic on it. Seems pretty good for limited, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it works
Yeah.
out. For this card in particular, they're showing it's pretty medium.
Yeah, it really depends how powerful these monocolor cards are and if monocolor decks are still that powerful in Standard.
Yeah.
Come rotation, which we have no idea yet.
Yeah, it's not like the adventure cards were on the front. They're just nuts and limited. Basically they're almost a guaranteed always playable because it's in limited. That kind of 2-for-1 power is just an auto include.
We're losing some of the previous quote unquote adamant cards though that drew people towards monocolor decks. Like we lose Goblin Chain Whirler. We lose what was the elf? Steel Leaf Champion.
Yep.
And those were also cards that, did something extra if you spent at least 3 of the appropriate mana on them.
Yeah, losing the cycle from Dominaria definitely affects the monocolor decks. But I mean, mono red's a deck that's just kind of always exists. And it's interesting to see kind of a shift now based on just this mechanic. It's just speculation, but maybe they're pushing a little more back towards monocolor strategies when we're coming out of a very, very multicolored Standard format.
Yeah, I mean, right now, 4 color decks, no issue. 5 actually, goalless decks. I mean, they've always been this sort of, they look like the 5 color limited piles we talked about historically, where you have 2 main colors and then you're splashing 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Is sort of what's going on in Standard right now. But yeah, it's wild. So
Yeah, and then wrapping up the new mechanics from Eldraine are food, where it's basically
oh yeah,
Tried and true classic.
yeah. You can't go wrong with this mechanic.
just certain cards create food tokens as part of their ability, and food tokens are artifacts that read 2 mana, tap it, sacrifice it, gain 3 life.
The art on these food tokens also looks delicious.
Yeah, look and eat.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Doom album food.
Yeah, so this mechanic is interesting because they've spoiled some cards already that involve, turning artifacts into 4/4s or animating artifacts, and
Yeah.
incidental life game will also be.
You can
pretty
play
good.
these cards to make your food really come alive. Just add a little bit of salt.
Yeah. Seasoned to taste. Now you're playing 3-color kitchen.
That was good.
Yeah, that was actually good.
Really good.
Yeah. Just bring garlic cloves as tokens.
Yeah. I know we're not in Innistrad, but
We finally have to do it, by the way. At the next GP we go to for the set for Montreal, for GP Montreal, we got to bring pepperoni sticks to people. And every time you get two for one, you got to give them a pepperoni stick.
Yeah.
those are our food
Because
tokens.
they're food tokens. Because we can use them as food tokens.
Putting pepperoni on the table.
Slap a Slim Jim on the table.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'm going to gain some life and just eat it.
feeling healthy.
Yeah. So that wraps up the mechanics. This set is dropping on Arena right at the end of this month, so we don't have that much longer to wait till we get to start playing some Throne of Eldraine. But
There were a couple spoilers from this set we wanted to talk about too, right?
yeah. So we should kick it off with our boy.
Yeah, we already said he's back. He's the big one. Garrick, Cursed Huntsman.
Yeah. It's a 6-mana planeswalker, comes into play with 5 loyalty, costs 4, a black and a green. Its first ability is a 0. You create 2 black and green wolf creature tokens with, when this creature dies, put a loyalty counter on each Garrick you control. It has a -3, destroy target creature, draw a card, and -6. Get an emblem with creatures you control, get +3/+3 and have trample.
So the -3 and the -6 are pretty typical planeswalker abilities. The draw card on a -3 is really strong. That's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And the plus is like really interesting because it's not a plus, it's a 0. But it encourages you to trade off these wolves, which then, pumps up your Garrick, all your Garricks. Too bad there's not another one in standard, but I guess if you put this in another format.
Yeah. Yeah, the implications for like EDH and stuff.
Or, okay, here's some speculation. This Garrick's going to be in standard when Core Set 2021 comes out.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen recently that in core sets, they like to put 3 of the same planeswalker in it.
It's going to be Teferi next year.
Ah, damn.
during the announcement, they're like, "Yeah, so if you like Teferi,
No one does.
Yeah, and then that
Why?
was my first thought.
Change
like,
it.
I don't think anybody likes Teferi anymore.
Yeah, not after Teferi 3 has just run roughshod over our entire lives now.
I don't want 3 Teferis plus Teferi 3.
Well, too bad.
I want 3 Garricks that I can pump with these wolves.
Yeah. Well, from that mini spoiler in the announcement, it kind of makes it seem like it's going to be a Teferi 3
Dumb time wizard.
in the core set next year.
That's why he's just everywhere. He's Doctor Who in here.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, this 0 ability is actually nuts, right? Like creating 2 creatures.
Yes, it's very strong.
Yeah, like the last. I mean, we have a 6-mana planeswalker that pluses to make 1/2/2 right now in Liliana, and I mean, remember how busted Elspeth was?
Yeah.
Making 3/1/1s on its plus.
Yeah, it's unbeatable.
Yeah, I mean, of course this isn't a plus, but it's
close.
it's almost better,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Card's just this is sort of follows the stereotypical planeswalker design though that we complain about.
Yeah.
Like plus get some value, minus draw a card, like kill something, draw a card. Like it's the Obnixilis model, but it's very good.
It's not quite as snowbally, though. I do like the interaction between the 0. Like, it starts at 5 loyalty, so you can't -6 unless you trade off one of these wolves, which you would like to keep around if you're going to make an emblem. So,
Yeah, it's definitely a really interesting card.
It's kind of cool that you could you could draw a card in a tough spot versus like a control matchup or something if you wanted by killing one of your own wolves, and then that puts another loyalty counter on that you can maybe cash in later on.
yeah, also interesting.
So that is it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be -3 destroy target creature or planeswalker. We're talking about Garrick here.
Yeah, look at how big that axe is.
Yeah, well, and also isn't he's still cursed? He's still under the Veil curse.
Yeah, he's
by
called the Cursed
Liliana.
Huntsman, yeah.
Yeah.
And wasn't the whole thing that he's out there hunting down planeswalkers and killing them? Wasn't that like his whole thing?
Yep.
So why is he only minus to kill creatures? This is a flavor fail. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but he's been hanging out with wolves who are less brutal than he was.
I guess
So they calmed him
also
down.
he's in a fairy tale world because all the planeswalkers were busy fighting Bolas and he wasn't there. So he's just hanging out with wolves. Yeah.
He actually fits into the theme of the set really well too, right?
Yeah, he
Being
does.
a huntsman. It's a good character, I think.
Yeah. He makes the big bad wolf. Or maybe hunts it. There's got to be a big bad wolf in this set, right? If there's not, I'm mad.
Yeah. I'm assuming we'll see like Red Riding Hood, Big Bad Wolf. and
Yeah,
then
if there's not a big bad wolf on it.
Garrick's the huntsman from that story.
Because big bad wolf is definitely not copyright protected.
No, it's in World of Warcraft. It's in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I only know this because of Fables, the comic book, which I made a joke about Watsu finally reading, right? Fables is like one of the most successful comic series of all time, and it's about fables, essentially, who are living on Earth and hiding because they get taken over by, like, their worlds are being sort of, like, invaded. I don't want to give away spoilers, but because the villain is, like, they don't give away who the villain is. I'll tell you after the show if you want to know because it's hilarious. But anyway, like, Big Bad Wolf is one of the main characters because he's not copyrighted. So anyway, unrelated, but
Cool. All right, moving over. Cam, you're really excited about this next guy.
Yeah, so someone in this room told me at one point that there would not be fairies in this set. But still, he was wrong.
Yeah.
There are fairies
Yeah.
in the fairy tale. Well, I don't understand. Anyway, this is Rankle, master of pranks. He's got a great YouTube channel. He costs 2 generic black legendary creature fairy rogue, flying and haste on a 3/3, which is already pretty good for 4 mana. And then in addition, whenever Rankle, master of pranks, deals combat damage to a player, you choose any number of the following. Each player discards a card. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Each player sacks a creature. So it's very easy to put this in a deck where you don't care about the downside of discarding a card or sacrificing a creature, and you can just decimate your opponent's resources.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of pranksters, you probably hear a little Leia barking.
Yeah, in the background.
Oh. I assume he moved to Eldraine after Vine closed down.
Yeah. He was on Vine. Couldn't quite kick it on TikTok, so we went to Eldraine.
But yeah, there was a bunch of cards we were joking about. Chandra, we're talking about. This guy's got me.
3 mana Chandra, just make some 1/1s and then sack them with his hits.
Attack them, yeah. Play this and attack them. Just sack one of your elementals. There's a bunch. There's no shortage of just sort of things you can throw away. It's a pretty powerful effect if you're playing against just a mid-range creature deck, right? Something like, I don't know, let's imagine that there's a good Knights deck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's all these already supported Knight spoiler cards where you just every turn get to make them sacrifice one of the, you know, we know tribal decks are, you know, they need all their pieces.
And it's also like the fact that you can choose any number, it's not just one of these, like gives it a lot of flexibility in its play. And like if you have any other card advantage effect in your deck, it's easy to imagine where you engineer a scenario that your opponent is top decking, and so you choose both modes where like opponent discards a card and draws a card. So there's like, you're getting their last cards and you're looting. Oh wait, it happens in a different order, right? So like they discard. Okay, never mind. That doesn't work. But like, it is still very flexible that you don't get to pick just one. Like it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, for sure. So the next card we wanted to talk about is the Royal Scions.
Yeah, I just deeply concerned here about the 3 mana planeswalkers they think are okay to continue to print as if it's just no big deal. I'm particularly rankled that this is a 3 mana planeswalker that starts with essentially 6 loyalty. It only pluses. So yeah, I guess I should read what it does. It's a 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 red. Its +1 is draw a card, then discard a card. Its other +1 is target creature gets a +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn. And then it's -8. Ultimate is draw 4 cards. When you do, the Royal Suns deals damage to any target equal to the number of cards in your hand. I think this card is extremely strong. It ultimates very quickly. The ultimate is relevant, although it doesn't win the game, which I like. I mean, it better not for a 3 mana planeswalker, or the format just immediately devolves into this being the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Having said that, there aren't a lot of creature decks that can answer a 6 loyalty planeswalker on turn 3. When you're on the play and you play this, I think it's very going to feel very snowball-y because you're always going to find the cards you need. You're always going to find the correct answers. You're always going to find what you're looking for in Standard. Sure, it's just a loot every turn, but I think that on a Planeswalker that also can, I don't know, pump a creature and do some damage, or just the ultimate, it can be very threatening. It also just might end up in a Standard world where it sees no play. It's difficult to say.
The closest comparison is Sarkhan Fireblood, another 3-mana Planeswalker that just sort of loots. I guess it rummaged, you discarded it, and then you drew, so this is better. But I mean, I still killed people with Sarkhan, and like, it didn't quite have the support there for its plus, and like, it sort of fell in and out of favor for a bit. But in a small set Standard, this could easily take over.
Yeah, I think it could be very powerful. I think the card's really good. I just think it's really threatening to have these kind of powerful 3-mana Planeswalkers that are guaranteed to always get a lot of value. I mean, if you get to use this thing twice, you're spending 3 mana to loot twice, which I think is pretty good. I don't know that that's enough for Standard playable, but the threat of it ultimating, and also that it will fog in the sense of they have to attack it with creatures if, you know, they don't have a Planeswalker removal spell. I think that's a lot. Like against something like Mono Red, where you just need to find sideboard pieces or find pieces to, you know, that are good in the matchup, they're going to spend time attacking this, et cetera, et cetera. That is exactly what you want against Mono Red. It acts as a double looting and a fog for 3 mana. Okay, I'm listening. That's very powerful. You know, if I'm just trying to set something up, either as in a control deck or a combo deck. And then not to mention, you know, the synergies it will have with certain cards, like, I don't know, let's say Niv Mizzet, right? Whenever I draw a card, I ping damage.
Yep. Man, I forgot that card existed.
Yeah, you don't see it anymore. It's too slow. It doesn't do anything anymore right now. But in small set Standard, even smaller set Standard, Niv Mizzet was a house.
Yeah.
That was one powerful dragon. And I think it's a card that could be reborn. Not the 5-color version, but, you know, could see play again, you know, and this is a card that synergizes well with it, along with many other cards from the Izzet Guild in the Ravnica set. So I think the card's pretty strong. Not my favorite card of the spoilers so far. My favorite card, of course, being the Gilded Goose.
Gilded Goose.
Which is by far the coolest card spoiled.
We'll pull it up so you can
It's the
talk a little
best.
bit about it.
I mean, it's a 1-mana 0/2 flyer. Green. Just a green for a 0/2 flyer. When Gilded Goose enters the battlefield, create a food token, which you can pay 2 and sack to gain 3 life. You can tap it and pay a green and a colorless to create a food token. Or you can tap it and sacrifice a food token and add 1 mana of any color. So it's a one-shot Birds of Paradise that also just makes a bunch of food later.
Can Mono Red exist in a Standard where gooses are flying around?
I don't know, man. The goose is loose.
They got to shock this thing so you don't ramp and then you gain 3 life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
This thing's nuts.
Wow.
I actually think this card's good. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out.
No, I mean, like, elves are rotating and it does a bunch of other stuff.
I think that it flies is also relevant, that it's a 0/2 with flying is relevant. Because, you know, it can block flyers, it can block dumb things like, I don't know if Spectral Sailor still continues to see play, which it has in certain decks, right? In the blue-green flash deck, which essentially loses nothing in rotation. Like, it can keep playing the game it's been playing, right? Yeah, I think Gilded Goose is actually interesting. And yeah, obviously paying to make mana later is not great, but I don't know. I think the gaining life consistently, I think in limited, this card's unbeatable.
Yeah, it seems pretty good.
I don't know. I just think it's funny. It's probably not constructed playable, but it's hilarious.
Are you ready for the goose mirrors where, like, you turn 1 goose, make a token, they turn 1 goose, make a token, you use your extra mana to cast a fairy and bounce their token, and then they can't do anything?
Yeah. I don't actually think it's constructed playable. It's way too dirty, but I think it's sweet and limited, and I'm going to pick it every single chance I get in limited. I do think that the Clock Tower card is playable and it's constructed, however.
Midnight Clock?
When the clock strikes 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the 1 mana... you're going to pull it up.
3 mana.
Or 3 mana, sorry. 3 mana artifact that adds a blue. So in my opinion, that makes it already playable. It's a mana rock. So 3 mana artifact that adds a blue, or you can pay 3 to put an hour counter on Midnight Clock, and also at the beginning of each upkeep. Not your upkeep, which I think, right, a lot of people will misread it
That's
first.
a lot quicker.
You put an hour counter on Midnight Clock, and when the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, you shuffle your hand in your graveyard and draw 7. So I think this card's actually quite good.
Yeah,
it says draw 7 on it.
Yeah. Drawing 7 is a good ability.
On a mana rock.
Yeah.
So I can play it in my ramp deck if I want, and then just find threats after I dump all my ram spells and
Yeah, exactly. It acts as a mana sink for the late game if you have no more gas, and then you just get to regas.
just draw 7.
Yeah.
This card seems bananas to me.
It's also a common complaint that people have when playing against control decks is that once control decks have stabilized the game, they don't have a clock.
Well played.
Yeah. Well done.
But yeah.
You're on fire today, man.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are killing it today. You know that school's back on. You know, you got your A game on.
Yeah.
You came prepared. Yeah, your mental game is strong
I've
right
been
now.
thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Putting that noodle to use. The cup noodle tournament. Man, but yeah, I think a lot of people misread this at first as the beginning of your upkeep. But it's each. That's not that long. And the fact that you can, and that it ramps is just a blue mana rock is already pretty, it's not playable, but it's close. But yeah, I think this card actually does a lot because the payoff is huge.
Yeah.
So I think this card's actually constructed playable. I would put this on my list of constructed possibilities. Unfortunately, the Goose isn't, despite being the most adorable and coolest card so far.
Yeah. All right.
But Midnight Clock is sweet. But that's all. I mean, we don't have full spoilers, so who knows? It's impossible to say. I'm actually kind of stoked about spoilers, which is a first.
Whoa.
Mostly
Adam's
'cause-
stoked about spoilers.
You're a new man.
2019.
Yeah,
What's
dude,
going on
I'm going to
here?
get some angry messages from some fellow, like I'm selling out from some
Yeah.
fellow spoiler hating listeners. But I don't know. I just like the flavor of this set.
Yeah, it's sweet. Fairy tales and Arthurian, legends. It's
Yeah, I'm
awesome.
just a fantasy nerd at heart. What do you want from me?
Yeah. Just give us some good equipments that I can search with Stoneforge and Modern.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
Well,
Good
Not a-
equipment in standard. That's
not a
what
hot
I'll do.
showing for Stoneforge.
yeah, we'll get there. We have a few more announcements to get to first, though.
Oh, yeah.
We also got the upcoming sets from 2020 announced for next year. We have Theros Beyond Death, Ikoria Lair of Behemoths, Core Set 2021, and Zendikar Rising. So got a couple places we're returning to next year, plus one brand new one we've never been to. Theros Beyond Death, apparently we get to go to the underworld this time and see what that's like, so that's cool.
Yeah, you gotta go get Elspeth back.
Yeah, exactly. Finally get Elspeth back in Standard.
Okay,
Yeah,
we need
I
a new
guess-
white planeswalker.
That's definitely Erebos on the picture, right?
No, that's the masks of his guys that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the Erebos symbol, right?
Okay.
But yeah,
because she's in the underworld with.
yeah, and when they announced it, they said it's going to be in the underworld, so will be
Yeah.
pretty sweet.
So Elspeth's going to end up coming back. She's going to escape the underworld is the story, right? I think everyone
Yeah.
always suspected this.
Yeah, we can help.
Although I did see someone sort of fear mongering saying that you guys remember Gideon is from Theros. So maybe he died and went there and we're just going to get more Gideons.
Ooh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that he
Nice.
goes to the underworld in Theros.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know how it works, if it matters which plane you die on
Right.
or which
yeah.
plane you're from. But please no more Gideons.
Yeah, I mean, I got some questions actually. How's this cosmology work actually? I am curious. But I assume it's because they want to bring Elspeth back. Because now if Gideon is gone, Ajani is the white Gatewatch planeswalker.
Mhm.
And Elspeth's Ajani's really good friend, right? If I
Yeah, that
remember.
guy loves Elspeth.
Yeah, because didn't he go to Theros to rescue her?
Yeah, they were there together the first time we went to Theros.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Ikoria Lair of Behemoths is apparently a giant monster set, so I'm expecting Godzilla.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah,
better
let's
be
go.
or Riot.
Yeah, Godzilla
Mothra.
or Riot. Come
Yeah,
on,
better
man.
be some Mothra. Oh yeah, all that stuff. Sweet name though,
Mhm.
Lair of the Behemoths. That sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
actually. Why am I so optimistic about Magic? What's wrong here? Their marketing has tricked me with their dumb gingerbread person commercial.
Oh, that commercial is so good though.
The Smash Mouth remake is the only one I actually saw. Where someone changed the music to when Garrett
Yeah.
kicks open the door, it's All Star. But I haven't watched the original. That's the only one I saw. And let me tell you, it looked great.
Yeah. I was playing the trailer for my girlfriend before you guys came over, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna hide the title. You have to tell me what you think this is. 30 seconds in, she's like, is this Shrek?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after Core Set 2021, we have Zendikar Rising to kick things off at the end.
The return to the return.
Yeah, the return to the return.
Is this the
to the
third?
Battle of
The
Zendikar.
third, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The third return.
Mhm.
The Eldrazi are gone. And apparently, if Rosewater said if you liked original Zendikar, this is a return to that.
Isn't that what he said last time
set.
too?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. But
I don't trust Morrow.
yeah, we'll see. Things are looking good.
Yeah, it should be sweet. I'm glad they're back to this kind of set design where we're not stuck on the same set, like rivals, Ixalan kind of thing. I like that it's changing every time for each quarter, but they can do whatever they want. I just think it's cool.
Yep. And
But
then
that's about it for.
there was an announcement about a historic a couple of weeks ago that we never really talked about. Historic being the non-rotating format for MTG Arena.
Yeah, the eternal format for Arena.
Yeah. And there were some good things in the announcement. They're going to have a ladder for historic starting in December. There's going to be historic events. So there will be some sort of competitive play aspect to historic, which I think is really important.
I think it's very important for Arena players who are new as well, so they don't just lose their cards and they're like, wait, so they're gone? You know what I mean? I think people would be very frustrated about that. So.
Yeah, exactly. And they also announced that they're going to be adding, new cards to historic every so often, small sets of 15 and 20 cards from Magic's history. So cards we've seen in the past that maybe, modern or legacy cards that will get ported over to Arena. So that's cool.
I think that's really sweet. That's really cool. Because it just having new design deck building spaces is one of the most satisfying things of Magic. I'm very cool with there just being a bunch of formats. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And I mean, who knows? Maybe historic ends up being a really sweet format and then it gets more support, you know? So,
well, just by virtue on being on Arena, it's probably going to be a huge format.
Yeah. So it really only time will tell when it comes to this. But the one huge downside to this announcement was that they announced after November update that you'll have to spend 2 wild cards to get 1 historic card.
That's a beating.
Which is a pretty huge yikes.
Yeah, that's a huge beating.
A lot of people unhappy about that. But, I mean, when they first announced historic, that it was going to be a casual-only format, and it was only going to be available for best-of-1 play, it's a couple months later, and they've already gone back on that based on the feedback they got from that original announcement. So maybe that's not something that will be completely set in stone, or maybe it is because money speaks louder than words.
I do like that they're walking things back when they make a decision and the community sort of says, no, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. And they walk it back on, on some things. I wish they do it on more things, but hey, not bad.
I definitely think the most exciting part of this announcement is that they're just going to be adding new cards that we've seen from Magic history every so often.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
To keep the format
Imagine
exciting.
you get Brainstorm in there.
Yeah. I mean, well, a lot of people were pissed that they weren't just going to add every set that's already programmed into Arena.
Right, like the Kaladesh ones.
Kaladesh, Shamaket, etc. But I don't know. I still think this is
it's better than nothing.
A cool thing to do. Yeah. And you're right. It is better than nothing.
Better than nothing. The Magic Online story.
This really opens up.
I mean, I'm not wrong on this one. I mean, what do you want? When it comes to playing Magic online with digital objects, you take what you can get, Arena or otherwise. Like you're just like, all right, it's not bad.
What were you gonna say, Cam?
I was just gonna say that this opens up Arena as a like a program that pet deckers can use.
Yeah, for sure.
Because previously, there really wasn't really a format for these people. They knew a rotation was coming. They don't really like limited.
Yeah.
But now they can card style out their favorite deck.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
Get your new card styles.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, this was a lot to cover for just announcement stuff. This was just Disorganized News Club.
Yeah, so let's start talking some actual tournament Magic. We had SCG Dallas this past weekend, which was the first paper modern tournament with Stoneforge Mystic legal and Faithless Land looting and Hogak banned.
How'd Stoneforge do?
Well, we saw 0 copies of Stoneforge make it into the top 8. So
just coming through the gates. Watch out.
There are definitely a bunch of Stoneforges in the top 16, but nothing breaking through to the elimination rounds. Byrne had a really good tournament, putting 3 copies in the top 8, absolutely smashing the Swiss, which I think is pretty.
I wasn't even a little surprised.
Yeah, neither was I. A lot of people trying out their new Stoneforge decks. No one really has the best versions of these new decks. And when people are just casting 2-mana 1/2s,
And then getting them searing blazed.
Searing blaze is definitely a good way to counteract that, right?
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
So not surprised to see Burn have a really good showing, but it fell in the finals to 4-color Wurza in the hands of Harlan Fear, who has just been absolutely dominating the SCGs this year with the Wurza decks.
He's just been dominating the SCGs for a while now. Yeah, he's an excellent player. He always plays decks that I would also play. Him and I play very similar style of decks, which I like. And this deck, and I think you said he went 5-1 versus Burn on the weekend.
Yeah,
that's a shocker.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
I don't think you have a very good Burn matchup. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I mean, because of Thopter, like the Thopter sort, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely tough, Post board, it's a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you have your brutalities in the board, which if you draw,
you win the game.
You draw one, and the matchup just swings so much in your favor. So, this is one of those decks, though. I've seen a lot of people iterating on Urza playing versions with white, so they could play Stoneforge instead of Goblin Engineer.
Yep.
This version, though, just staying true to form, straight up 4-color, no Stoneforges.
Engineer's better. Engineer's definitely better than Stoneforge. I don't even think this is a question.
In this strategy, I think I agree with you, yeah.
I just don't even think it's close. Yep. Engineer is incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm. But, this is one of the decks that I think you, Adam, said was in your running for probably just straight up best deck in the format.
I definitely said so and had thought so for weeks. I think I had been saying that I was going to pick up the pieces. Remember on the drive back from SEG Richmond, after we played, I said that I was probably going to end up picking up the pieces, and then I changed my mind because of how much Mox Opals are.
Yeah.
Because I actually don't own Mox Opals, and I think I own, I don't own Urzas, but that's not a big deal. But I own everything else in this deck, but I don't own, Mox Opals, and they're like 100 something each.
Most expensive card in the deck, yeah. But then rest of the top 8 decks, we had Titan Shift making a comeback.
Yeah, deck I wasn't even a little surprised to see do well again, because again, this is a deck that if people are deciding to cast Squire on turn 2, you couldn't be happier.
Mm-hmm.
Because what are they going to do? Get a Batterskull? Any sort? You're just going to play a Sakura Tribe Elder, block the Batterskull, sack it, get a land, untap, play Titan, and the game's over. Yeah. You just don't care about Stoneforge Mystic.
Exactly, yeah. And now with the Hogak being gone, the format slowed down. I mean,
you can actually
slow
play
down
Magic.
In air quotes. It's still modern, but it's slow enough now that Titan Shift can really prey on the format. We had one copy of Tron in the top 8, which I think a lot of people kind of defaulted to as the starting place for this new modern format.
Yeah, the problem is that's why a lot of people also showed up with Burn.
Yeah.
Right? Because Tron famously just a tough Burn matchup. Exactly. A really tough out for Tron.
Yeah.
You can win a game. You can almost always win a game in the match, but winning the whole match is very, very difficult. And I'm only going on what you've told me over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you always lose 1-2, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not in your favor. Let me tell you.
You don't get 0-2 though, right? You always go 1-2.
Yeah, it's usually 1-2. You can steal a sideboard game with your Thrag Tusks for sure.
But, and then that's it.
Yeah. Grixis Death Shadow making a reappearance to the format as well. That's not a deck we've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's wild.
Really, really smashed out of the format by Hogak, but it's back.
Well, Modern just went back to, sort of what it was plus the Wurza deck, which is new. But otherwise, a lot of the decks are still sort of kicking around.
Yeah. Then the one deck that we haven't really seen before is this black-red mid-range deck.
Yeah, this is definitely a newer one brought about by some newer cards.
Our Dreadhorde Arcanist, Seasoned Pyromancer. We've got Chandra, Acolyte of Flame. It's a main deck Blood Moon deck, so you're gonna steal some free games off just your main deck Blood Moons. But
this is just a Thoughtseize Inquisition mid-range deck with just Bedlam Reveler, Dreadhorde Arcanist to recast your Fatal Pushes or your Lightning Bolts, and flashback some spells. Just black-red mid-range. Kind of wild to see that this deck would top 8. It's really, really a unique deck, but it's really just sort of also a mid-range deck. There's nothing crazy about it, but it's a cool build for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of just the new version of Mardu Pyromancer, right? You're dropping, you don't have looting anymore, so you lose your Lingering Souls package.
Yeah.
And then you're just swapping out your Pyromancers for Dreadhorde Arcanist and
playing Seasoned Pyromancers.
Yeah.
Well, this is the grown-up version. It's matured.
Yeah. I'd love to see Hazoret the Fervent making an appearance, though.
Yeah. Oh,
Love
yeah.
that card.
Yeah, big Hazoret fan. Hazoret's very good. Well, and also Hazoret, absolutely excellent versus Wurza.
Mhm.
Gets through. You can do damage through Ensnaring Bridge with Hazoret.
Yeah.
Hazoret is a
definitely.
way out of Ensnaring Bridge. So Hazoret was actually tech. Wow, I know way too much about Modern for a format I claim to dislike, but Hazoret was actually tech in some Jund lists for the
Lantern Control,
for
right?
Lantern Control,
Yeah.
and various other decks were playing. They would have Hazards in the board, both Blood Moons and for bridges.
Yeah.
So Hazard covers a lot of problems for a lot of decks. The card is very, very good in Modern, actually. Like, it does a lot. You're almost always hell-bent in Modern after turn 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, grinding things out.
Especially with Liliana the Veil in your deck.
Right, you have Lily. Yeah, exactly. So Hazard does a lot of work. Card's crazy good.
So there are some Stoneforge decks in the top 16. We've got a Devoted Druid deck, a blue-white control deck moving towards Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, this is just Stoneblade, right? This is just a Stoneblade package.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much just your modern Stoneblade deck. One interaction that I saw from the weekend, which I think a lot more people are going to start leaning into now, is the Spell Queller Teferi 3 interactions. I think Stoneforge decks built around that are primed to be really powerful once people figure out the best builds of it.
Yeah, so noted occasional guest on the podcast and fellow Disorganized Wizard Hemsley on Moto, who's the, he plays a ton of Modern, plays a ton of matches. He's played a lot with a Bant list, which I'll post in the deck lists on our Discord. If for anyone in our Discord, you can check out the deck list. And I'll post it there. But he's done some work with different different Stoneforge decks, and he's been playing almost Stoneforge decks exclusively, and thinks that it's just completely busted in Modern, and people just aren't finding the right shells yet.
Yeah, his version of the deck, a collected company deck with your Stoneforge, your Quaddles, Spell Queller, Ranger Captains of Eos.
Yeah,
It's
Ranger-
definitely a sweet deck, and he's been doing pretty well with it online.
I think he said his combined record is 13-2 with it right now. So
Yeah.
a 5-0 and 2 4-1s is what he said, which is really strong. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a GP. That's a top 8.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously not saying that, you know what I mean? Some online league are the equivalent, but, that's a good record. And he definitely is a Modern Moto grinder, so he would know. But, Stoneforge's still lurking around all over. There's so many different builds. Yeah, but the Teferi 3 Spell Queller, this was a deck that I had mentioned last week, remember? Was Spirits.
Yeah.
Because I said they played Teferi 3 Spell Queller.
Yeah.
This is a combo, and as Cam pointed out to me earlier on the pre-show, this is a combo not as cool as Spell Queller Standstill, but Teferi 3 Spell Queller is still very, very sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really obnoxious, actually. There's a lot of different cool ways you can build Stoneforge decks that people are starting to show up with, but none of them broke top 8. A fish deck got 19th, which I just want to point that out.
Thanks.
Whenever fish does well, I always, it was like when I got second at the MCQ here, I was just losing my mind. I was like, can you believe it?
Yeah. There was one deck that had a pretty good performance this weekend as well, the green-white Eldrazi deck with main deck Karns.
Oh, I haven't seen this deck.
This deck actually looked really good on camera all weekend long.
Wow.
This is Ali Warfield's 22nd place deck.
This has got to just be a flavor fail, right? Like, wasn't Stoneforge Mystic among the tribes that were victimized by the Eldrazi on Zendikar? Like,
Yeah. Well, no.
Well, if you can't beat him, join him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this deck looks sweet. It's essentially just the Noble Hierarch blue, green Eldrazi deck, but just made blue-white, green-white.
Yeah.
To Noble Hierarch on one, and then just start trying to smash you with Eldrazi or Stoneforge and swords.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet. Has Reality Smasher, Thought Not.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she had a win in the final round
And missed.
of the tournament and lost to the, was it the black-red mid-range player? Or no, it was Grixis Death Shadow, I think she lost to.
Was the Shadow list playing Teemo Battle Rage? I didn't even look. I meant to look, and
Let's find out.
I forgot to, so you'll have to forgive me.
Sure is.
Yeah, I was going to assume it had to have been.
Yep.
I feel if you're playing that deck, you have to. You just got to get them dead right away.
I agree. But yeah, definitely a lot of cool decks. Stoneforge is making an impact on the format. Lots of copies of Stoneforge in the 5.0 list that have been posted recently. People are giving it a go, and I guess we just got to wait and see now for.
It's being thrown
more
all
big
over the
modern
place, and some things are doing well, but nothing has quite stuck yet.
Yeah, but we're getting there. There's a lot of people trying out different builds of Stoneforge decks, and I think it's definitely very good in Modern, but it'll be cool to see, if people start using it for different reasons other than just fetching Batterskull or fetching swords. Because I've definitely seen some decks that are doing different things that I think are really sweet. One in particular that I've been playing, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, I think that wraps up our week that was. We've back to a topic this week to talk a little bit about deck building.
Yeah, this is a good segue. This idea that like people are sort of including Stoneforge in a lot of different places, but more or less sort of with the same idea of getting Batterskulls and swords. And so the topic here is kind of about a nuance of deck building. And it's to a lesser extent kind of how to realize when a certain direction in deck building isn't working. And more particularly, sort of recognizing when two cards or two aspects of your deck that seem like they work together actually require different deck building support and therefore shouldn't be included, despite sort of seeming like, easily tricking people into thinking that they should be. And so sort of the example of this that happened to Adam and I was in playing Golos Nexus decks in Standard. What happened is the sort of on paper, it looks like Golos and Nexus play very well together. Nexus needs 7 lands. Golos, you play it on turn 5, it gets a 6th land, and then on the next turn you play a 7th land and you can Nexus. It also has its activated ability, which looks at the top 4 cards and you can cast them for free. Top 3 cards, sorry, you can cast them for free. And so if a Nexus is in there, you get to just Nexus. And so Golos is a card that wants you to include sort of big swingy plays in your decks, such as Nexus, that sort of take over the game. And this was kind of the trick. It's like these cards in this way look like they should be included together and be very strong. And so Adam was playing a bunch of these decks. I was playing a bunch of these decks. And then we each kind of independently were unsatisfied with how Nexus was playing. I think it was 2 a.m. We were sitting in a pizza shop waiting for some pizzas, discussing if Nexus should be in this deck.
It's when the best deck building happens.
That's a
2
fact.
o'clock.
That is a fact.
And what we realized is that despite Golos and Nexus playing well together, the rest of the deck that supports these cards is actually very different. The support you want for Golos is a Field of the Dead package. Because otherwise, you're just getting a land and it's kind of just a 3/5, which is still good, but getting Field of the Deads is nuts. So you want a Field of the Dead package, which means you're playing Growth Spile and Circuitous Route. You're playing these ramp cards that are seen in Escape Shift and other Field of the Dead decks. But if you're spending your early turns doing this, by the time you have mana and you play a Nexus, you've nothing on board to take advantage of the extra turn with. So you're just paying 7 mana to draw a card. And this ended up happening in a lot of our games where we would constantly, or we started to notice that we were constantly just casting Nexus to cycle because the nature of the way that you support Golos means that you don't have a board early enough to take advantage of the Nexus. And when you do have a board early enough to take, or a board later in the game that can take advantage of the Nexus, you got a bunch of zombies and stuff. You already have 3 Field of the Dead that are triggering once to twice per turn. You don't need an extra turn.
You're winning those games anyway. So Nexus is just more of a win more in that situation.
Right. So it's this sort of phenomenon of 2 cards that look like they should be included, but don't actually because of everything else that needs to go along with them. And it seems that other people started to notice this too, because I think Ali Antrazi was someone who had been playing Golos Nexus and recently published a list that was just Golos Land Destruction. It had moved away from Nexus in favor of Casualties of War and more Starve Extinctions, etc. Deck Bedazzles. And so I think this is kind of an interesting point that there are these cards, these things that look like they should be good but can trick you. And calling back to last episode, I actually got a bunch of people on the Discord telling me that my machine learning example was both correct and good. So, go me, pat myself on the back. But this idea of getting stuck on local maximums in deck building, if you think, if you just take for granted that Golos and Nexus play well together, and then you try and optimize all these other parts of the deck, they do play well together somewhat, and you'll have a strong-ish deck, and you can make it a bit stronger. But unless you sort of leap over and start climbing the next hill, which is Golos without Nexus or Nexus without Golos, you're sort of going to be stuck on this small local maximum. And so that might be what's happening in Stoneforge or in Modern with Stoneforge. That like people have it in their head that Stoneforge should play a certain way because of their experiences with it when it was in Standard or their experiences with it in Legacy. Like every single one of these Stoneforge decks has swords and batter skulls. I'm not saying that that's not the best thing to be doing, but they're all just sort of starting from this baseline. And
hell, I saw Les playing Squadron Hawks. Like, come on, man, get out of here. Just play Lingering Souls.
right, and like trying to tweak and climb the hill that combination is on. When like maybe that's not the best. Maybe you've just kind of tricked yourself. Maybe, as Adam pointed out, like Stoneforge was very strong in Legacy because it requires a certain type of support, notably Force of Will, that is already good in that format. Maybe the type of support that Stoneforge requires in Modern dilutes the other parts of your deck too much because Modern is too fast or needs more linear answers or whatever. I don't know. I haven't actually tried deck building here. Other people would be more qualified than me to talk about this, but it could be a similar phenomenon.
Yeah, I think you want to just meme people almost in Modern, like the goofy, like the decks that always seem like meme decks, like the initial Colossal Hammer smash people decks. Those are the decks in Modern that end up just top 8ing PTs. You know what I mean? You think about Hollowed One originally. That deck was a joke. Like people laughed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. There's these like meme decks with a linear, powerful strategy, which is exactly not what all these people brewing Stoneforge are doing.
Exactly.
They're all putting value cards in and trying to play like the Stoneforge game that we've seen in the past.
We've always known, yeah. But I do think that value game is still very powerful, but it's going to have to look different in Modern because of the style of play that Modern requires, right? Like you're saying that, and Alex mentioned earlier, that Modern is just a format that's incredibly fast. It's faster than Legacy. It's faster, you know what I mean? That's just the way the format shakes out. The games are incredibly linear, incredibly direct, you know what I mean? So you need to find a way that if you're going to play Stoneforge, you either have to win at that game or be able to beat that game. You have to be able to beat decks like Titan Shift. If your Stoneforge deck can't do that, then you're going to have an issue, right? Because it wasn't very long ago in Modern that Titan Shift was the best deck. And we were coming up on a time recently before Hogak and all this other stuff from Modern Horizons where, why am I blanking on the name now? The bounce land with Titan, that deck, Bloom.
Oh, Amulet Titan.
Amulet Titan. Yeah, I don't know why I was blanking on the name. Yeah. Where Amulet Titan was approaching the best deck in Modern, right? There was a time. It wasn't long ago. It was just before Modern Horizons where people were starting to say, wait, this might be still an issue. That
and people were tweeting like, I'm going to get this deck banned again. Like,
yeah, exactly. And so I don't know what it is that the decks need to be able to stay alive in that world, but I think it's possible. There's always a way in Modern, life finds a way.
Yeah. One of the decks in Modern that I think has most successfully found new uses for Stoneforge Mystic right now is the Devoted Druid decks.
Yeah.
With packages like Viridian Lombo, which is just an infinite damage with your Devoted Druid combo, or Lightning Greaves to just be able to combo it right away. Give your Druid haste.
People are going to be mad when they realize how much Lightning Greaves cost in paper.
How much is it?
It's really expensive.
Isn't it like an EDH staple?
Yeah, it's an EDH like all-star.
Jeez.
It gives your commander haste.
Sure does.
Yeah, card's expensive. It's just always hard to track down copies of it. But yeah, exactly. It's cards like that. You were talking about a deck like that you've been playing.
I've been playing the Devoted Blade deck on Moto, and it's great.
Yeah, see, and that's exactly the kind of deck I think that Stoneforge needs to be playing in Modern.
Mm-hmm. And like you still play a sword and you play a Batter Skull, but you
get paired against Jund.
Yeah, like the Stoneforge isn't just a straight up, mid-range threat in your deck. It actually contributes to your combo game plan, which I think is huge for a deck like Devoted Druid. And it's really the only deck I think that has implemented Stoneforge into its combo game plan, aside from, the meme deck you mentioned in the Colossus Hammer deck, which is also doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just goes to show that you don't have to just get Batter Skulls and swords. There's other stuff you can do with it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a host of sort of really unique and different requirements in each format of Magic, right? Whatever the metagame is dependent on at whatever particular time in the game you're looking at, they require certain answers and certain play patterns. It's not just, play this card, it's good. It's because cards in a vacuum just don't matter, right? It's, how does it line up against everything, right? Now we see the return of Death Shadow, Titan Shift, all these cards, because the format has made space for them again. So how things line up is what's important. And Modern is just a format where, sometimes being just this grindy, nice, fair deck is a really, really, really bad decision.
Yeah.
And it almost always is, and always has been in Modern. Modern is like, that's just the hard truth of Modern, that it's a linear combo format, really. I mean, it's not, but it's sort of heavily dominated by decks that can goldfish you, right?
Yeah.
They can interact. I'm not saying these decks don't interact. I'm saying that they're all decks that have incredibly fast goldfish potential. They'll kill you very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure that Stoneforge is really powerful enough to push Modern away from its, how linear the format is, but it's definitely a welcome change, I'd say, to see people trying stuff that's less, just straight balls to the wall linear. And the format is, slowing down a little and getting a bit more interactive, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I guess just to keep this in mind, like potentially strong card, like with the spoilers coming out soon for Throne of Eldraine, there are some cards that will be obviously strong, but as we always advocate for, like look for, again, we don't have the full spoiler, but just look for cards that could play well together and don't sort of get caught up on like an obvious interaction. Like maybe don't get caught up on like the legendary thing that plays with knights and other knights. Like,
well, the real lesson is don't try and port dead standard decks.
Don't try and port dead standard decks, which people always try and do in a rotation. Right? Those ideas, don't get caught on those ideas. And also like don't get caught on like a particular combo. If you like a card, try and find everything it could interact with, and the first one you saw probably isn't the strongest.
Yeah. If you want to check out any of these sweet cards and order any of these sweet new cards or old cards, or put in some pre-orders for Eldraine, be sure to check out wizardtower.com for all your single needs. They have free shipping in Canada on orders over $15. Also check out their website, MTG Canada. You find articles and strategy articles and video playthroughs.
Yep.
Are pre-orders up yet?
I don't know. They will be soon.
They will be soon.
Yeah, it's the day after our first spoilers leak, so we'll get pre-orders eventually. I'm not sure if
very
they're
soon,
yet, but yeah,
You can pre-order.
yeah. You before we wrap things up, actually, the Tower is hosting a pretty big tournament this weekend. Their Player of the Year, which Cam, you're looking to defend your title for a third year in a row, correct?
Yeah, my second year of having this prize is coming to a close, so I got to go back and let the kids know that they haven't improved enough.
Well, we're rooting for you. Hopefully, the DWC can make it a hat trick when it comes to the Wizard Tower Player of the Year.
That would be sweet.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. If you want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/DWC Podcast. We're on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 and Facebook, the Disorganized Wizards Club Podcast. Head over there if you want to chat with us. Got any questions? We love answering questions from listeners. And however you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, any podcast app, leave a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. Everything helps this thing keep growing and bring it to new listeners. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week.
We got some new salt emojis in the Discord.
Oh, yeah.
I added some salt shakers. They've been very useful.
Of course.